Hello fellow gamers, and welcome back. I'm as always Captain Sedaris.
And here's 7 Saturn.
Joining us this time are Chrissstrahl and Daedalus, two long-time modders of Star Trek Elite Force 2.
Hello.
Hi.
Before we start with the main topic, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I'm Daedalus. I've been modding Elite Force 2 since I was about 13. I've been there since the old community with Elite Force files many years ago, and that's also how I met Chrissstrahl. And yeah, we've been working together on this mod for many years, and yeah, it's been good.
Well, you know my name already, so I've been introduced to modding, I think that was, about 2002, 2003, somewhere around that time. And I was playing Armada 2, and well, obviously I liked the game. I started modding on the game just for fun, and I figured out that I liked this kind of torture. So at some point after I made a small mod for Armada 2, I went on to the next game, and that was Elite Force 2 or Elite Force 2. Yeah, I've been there ever since. I did some other projects, side projects on Doom 3. Oh god, I can't remember. A few side projects, and including Medal of Honor, where we have now a new co-op. And well, I'm still in Elite Force 2, still working on my co-op mod, trying to get it as good as I can.
As you can guess, today we have a look at the shooter Star Trek Elite Force 2 from the year 2003. As the name suggests, it's a sequel to Star Trek Voyager Elite Force from 2000. You play again as Alexander Monroe, but this time you spend most of your time on the Enterprise under Picard. The game itself runs without a problem in Windows 10, just for the multiplayer you will need the new master server patch, since the original master servers are down. But let's make a step back and have a look at the history of the game. The development of the game was a little bit strange. First they had to rewrite the story because they planned to have a terrorist attack, more precisely a shuttle should fly into Starfleet Academy, and well, Paramount wasn't of course too happy with this plot, so they had to change it a little bit. Then, as mentioned, the game released in June of 2003 with the most advanced version of the Quake 3 engine. Shortly after the release, Activision decided to make his brilliant move and sue Paramount, because they thought they mishandled the whole franchise. To prove their point, they only made 50,000 copies of the game to show that the game didn't sell well. Here also a small side note, they already planned Elite Force 3 in the Doom 3 engine, which of course got cancelled because of the fallout of the lawsuit. After the release we only got a small patch, and Ritual released a part of the game code. To end the official story, in 2013 the official master servers got shut down. Luckily the community stepped up and fixed that hole.
Well, as far as I know, I've never heard about the Quake 3 idea of Elite Force 3. I don't know if it ever was so or not. But I'm actually happy that it didn't happen, not because I wouldn't like Elite Force 2 or Elite Force 3, but because the Doom 3 engine was a step backwards from the terms of gameplay and feel. So the engine used with Elite Force, as you notice I always say Elite Force for some reason. I know it's Elite Force, but yeah, Elite Force 2 has a very smooth and a very optimized and a very powerful engine, and it plays very, very well in multiplayer. And the same cannot be said about the Doom 3 engine. It's definitely very shutterish and has micro shutters quite a lot, and has a very bad performance compared to Elite Force 2, and it would be not that great in multiplayer. Raiden Software improved on the engine and got it to run very well with Quake 4, I think. But it still is not the same. It still feels like a step backwards. So I think it's not a really bad thing that it did happen on that engine, that is.
Yeah, I also think it was a good move that they decided to cancel that project. But I'm happy at least that they thought about the future.
Yeah, from what I know about the Elite Force 2 having so few copies made of the game is that this is actually normal that a developer team or a publisher decides to publish first in certain regions where they know they have strong sales, and then they look how well it did sell, and then they decide if they want to make another few copies of it or not and ship them, because it was still at the time, for people who don't know, on CDs, as far as I know, yeah. So you had to create 2 CDs and ship them in a package. So there was always cost involved in creating more copies. It's not like nowadays where you say, just generate a few more CD keys and send the stuff out. From what I know from the sources of the internet, they never got to a phase where they could really go and print more CDs. So they were stuck with the first few printed CDs, and that was it. So that's the reason why you never really find so many copies of the game like in other games.
I would like to add something. When Elite Force 2 came out, it was very much an underappreciated title. I remember the Elite Force community was actually quite negative towards it. Mostly in the community it was like, oh, the multiplayer sucks, and the game was basically trashed purely because of that. The Elite Force 1 multiplayer was identical to Quake 3, and when Elite Force 2 came out, the multiplayer at least was so different, and fans of Elite Force 1 didn't appreciate it, so the game had quite a bad rep when it first came out, which I always thought was a shame, because when we look at the game now, I see nothing but praise for this game, and it truly is one of the best Star Trek games ever made. And I don't think that helped it in terms of popularity at the time. And I also always say there were people in the community who wanted Elite Force 3, even so far as there was once a Half-Life 2 mod in development that was supposed to act as a Elite Force 3, but obviously for legal reasons that mod was cancelled.
Yeah, that's true. So I can confirm that. Well, you don't have to forget that the Elite Force Voyager multiplayer was really, really well made. It was a really good and excellent multiplayer. And I don't think it was from the day one like this. I think they developed it over time and added it with a patch, but I'm not sure about this. But Elite Force 2 never got to this point where they would say, okay, now let's do something for the multiplayer. And I had I would not call it pleasure, but well, the pain to have the experience that people from Elite Force, from Star Trek Voyager Elite Force would come over, play the game for 10 minutes and then say exactly, well, it sucks, it's a bad game, it's shit. It's like, because the scale in the game is completely different. The models are bigger, the polygons are higher, the complete scale of everything has changed. So,
yeah, well, for me, literally,
yeah.
I remember having conversations with people on the old forums, and they used to say things like, oh, I installed Elite Force 2, I went into the multiplayer, and no, I didn't like it. I uninstalled Elite Force 2 and chucked it in the bin. And I used to say things like, well, why don't you play the single-player campaign? It's incredible. It's even better than the original, in my opinion. I used to say things like that. So, it was just judged purely for the multiplayer, which was a great shame.
First, I want to clarify, most of the infos I have are from an interview from Space Game Junkies. They had an interview with the developers back in 2016, and they mentioned that the multiplayer was only a side project. It wasn't really the main project goal. They focused on the single player experience, and because Activision basically told them, you also have to make a multiplayer, and it's a Quake 3 game, you have to do it. So yeah, they included it, but you can see that they didn't spend that much development time for the multiplayer.
Yeah, you can see it in the code. You can see it in the game code that's provided from Brutal, and yeah, it's technically really well made. It's technically far superior over Star Trek Voyager Elite Force, but if you play a game, you don't really care how much technically it's superior over another game or not. You care that what is in the game and makes you have fun with the game or enjoy the game, that this is what you're focusing on, and that is what you are actually interested in being really good and enjoyable for you. So Well, that was not so much the case in Elite Force 2 with the multiplayer, because it was just, like you said, an addition. But for my project, the co-op mod, I learned that there's a lot of possibilities in the multiplayer. There's a lot of leftover code that was used in other games, and you could do a lot with it, but you would need a community to really develop something multiplayer concentrated, and that's not the case anymore in Elite Force 2. There's not really much left of a community. There's some players who play co-op, and so I think the multiplayer will be like it was all the years now. I don't think someone will come along and change the multiplayer anymore.
No, definitely not in 2020.
There's another thing I forgot to add. As far as I know, the servers, from what I have been told, and I'm not sure if that is true because I never directly asked anyone at Ritual, but in the forums of Ritual, someone from, I think, the staff of Ritual posted that they never hosted the servers, never hosted the master server. So that was the business of Activision. So when the server went down, it wasn't Ritual who did shut it down. So I think they never had one up in the first place for the game, as far as I know.
Yeah, it would make sense that this is part of the publisher, because also Activision was quite big back then.
Yeah, from the game executable, it goes directly to Activision. It goes to authentication, if2 authentication.activision.com or something like that. And the same for the master, if2master.activision.com. It's in the main game executable. And this is where we change the address so you can connect to the community master server. So that's why I know it.
Okay, then let's talk about the pros.
This is down to a bit of my personal opinion, but I always thought the single player campaign took everything that the first game did well and did it even better. So, you have more weapons, you have a longer campaign, you have new characters as well as returning characters, and the graphics still hold up well to this day. Like, I look at some of the character models now and I think, well, this looks really good for a 2003 game, and you look at some other games from that time and you think these graphics haven't aged well at all. Well, that's kind of half and half with Elite Force 2, because it does actually look pretty good for when it came out. Also, I always thought it was good how you got to explore the Enterprise the second time around, and also Elite Force 2 at the time was the only continuation of the Star Trek story after Nemesis outside of the books. Of course, now we have Star Trek Picard, but back then we didn't have any sort of media representation of what happened after the Nemesis film. So I always saw that as a plus as well. That's what I'd say the pros were, and some of the mods as well were the mod support and the ability to make mods, which you don't have so much in games today. That's all I can think of at the moment.
Okay, perfect. Chris?
Yeah, I think also the story was okay. It was a good story. It was not the best story, obviously, but it was a really good story. For a fast shooter, for a very dedicated shooter. The gameplay, I would definitely say the gameplay of the game is, I really, really enjoy the gameplay. I occasionally play Quake 3, not often, but once every 3 years or something like that. And when I play Quake 3 and then return to Elite Force 2 or Elite Force 2, I notice how much better and smoother the gameplay is and how much faster I feel to play in this game. So in Quake 3, I feel more like I'm a little bit slower and everything is a little bit shuttery. So I definitely prefer the gameplay in this game. And well, there are a lot of technical aspects in which the game is better, or really, really positive, really good, like the scripting language. As you might be aware, I made a complete co-op mod just with the support of level scripts, no C++ coding, no external binary stuff added to it, just the level scripts of the game that are so powerful that you can create an entire mod with just level scripts. I've not seen this in any other game. Probably something like this is possible with Half-Life 2, but I'm not sure. So this is a very powerful scripting engine, and the mod compatibility is really great. That's something I also really like. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. There's so much technical stuff I would praise, but I don't think it does anyone any good.
Yeah, well, it's part of your pros, so let's spit it out.
Well, You can modify weapons, models, effects, and AI, and a lot of other things, which I don't remember right now, from so-called TIC files. They have the extension TIK, and it stands for Tiki, which is obviously a good sign. And these TIC files are simple text files that have certain parameters of a model or a weapon or an AI, which you can easily modify to change the behavior of the AI, or change the weapon strength, or change the weapon size, or change the model size, or give the model a different AI profile. So there's a lot of things that you can fairly easily do. It's a little bit more complicated than in Armada 2, but it's in many things very similar from the logic. So I think this is a great advantage, and it's just sad that the game never really took off with modding as much as the first one, because I think all the modders who were previously contained to creating just new maps with some little features could have really done very excellent stuff in this game. So I think this is definitely a great pro, and I would like to see this capability and mod support in another game in the future. So if there would be another Star Trek game or science fiction game in general that's really good, that has a good gameplay and has good mechanics for modding, you can see me in there in the future, but I've not found such a game yet, so I will stick around for a while. So this is, I think, one of my favorite pros on the game. The just sheer unlimited, almost unlimited technical possibilities, just with coding without programming as in C++.
I think we're the only two people left still doing modding on this game, except maybe a couple of other people. But we're the only ones really that are still working on the same mod 10 years later.
Yeah. There's something else about this game. I have been a long time now in this community, and mostly 80% or more, this community is friendly. So this is not a standard in games. So in some games the people are nice, and some other games people are really nasty to each other. So in this game, people were usually nice and fair. So this is also something I would note as a positive of the game. And when I started modding, there were a lot of people like Tempest, Avenger, and oh my god, I don't remember all the names, that had been doing mods to the game and maps in the game. And they were all open and friendly for people who were interested in learning this stuff. And at the time, I was a complete beginner, and they were coming with open arms towards someone when there was a question or something like that, or if you needed help, they would say, okay, I can't really do this for you, but I can show you how you can do it. And this is something I have not seen in many communities. In many communities, I've seen people standing there and saying, you do it wrong, and not helping. So it was quite the opposite.
You're having a lot of experience in modding. Would you think this is something special to time frame? Because for older games, you very often hear, well, I didn't really start with all that knowledge I needed to do modding, but I was helped somehow by other people. And this kind of begs the question, did people change, or was it always like that there were communities where you weren't really helped, but more got your ass handed somehow with nasty stuff? Do you think this is a question of time, or really something that has always been like that?
I think that in games like this, where you have to learn really a lot to understand, or where you have to learn just a lot just to use the level editor, you have to learn quite a fair share of things and understand a fair share of things, which are not coming easy to your mind. So you have a learning curve which is very steep, and in the beginning it's very hard to get into it. But once you have a basic understanding, you can really be proud of yourself, and you want to share that. You want to be able to give this to other people, and you know how you felt when you started, and you remember that you could actually now be as useful or helping other people because you have already made it this far. And I think this is one of the motivating factors that keeps people friendly, because they had a rough start getting into it, and they probably recognize other people now asking for help that they have the same problem. I think that's a contributing factor, but I'm not so sure that it is just that. I would also say that there's a lot of timing involved, because back then modders were just students or normal people that were the peak of the community. They had the knowledge, they had the skills, and they were helpful, and they were in general usually, and there were a few exceptions, but they were generally good players. So they were very well respected because they were good players, very well respected because they had a lot of knowledge to share, and they were very well respected because they could change things, they could bring new stuff into the game or could help other people with their knowledge. And I think people like that are more rare these days because it's gotten more much easier today, and people are more rude these days. I have the feeling, well, that's my opinion, that people are more rude, that they rather be more negative about things. Instead of trying to solve a problem, they are saying it's too hard and they stop working on it. Or if someone asks for help in a forum today, they get a stupid answer like, look it up, you asshole, or whatever, something along those lines, or don't you know how to use Google? You get a answer in these days in a forum which is absolutely, utterly, totally useless to you, and downright, in the most cases, just insulting. And I didn't have that in the past. When I started, there was very little of this, and this kind of people were almost instantly vanished from the forum. So this doesn't happen these days. These days, there's a lot of tolerance towards bad behavior.
So maybe there's a lack of moderation, you mean?
Yeah, I'm pretty strongly now leaning towards the time frame.
Modding Elite Force 2 back in, they were, high school kids that, I just had very nerdy hobbies. You know how it is when you're at home and you're like, oh, what am I going to do today? Elite Force 2 UDK, let's give that a go. And then the rest is history.
These were exactly the people I learned from, so...
the internet wasn't as big back then either, so, you didn't have as many people on there. I mean, you always used to get nasty people on the internet, but obviously as time goes on, everyone's on the internet now, and everyone wants to do stuff on there, and they want to appear tough, I think, and so they just be rude to you. But I can't think of a negative experience with the Elite Force 2 community at all. So I think that might be a really big exception there, because most other communities, you've always got the odd person who's a problem, but I can't say that was the case with Elite Force 2. Everyone was so friendly and helpful.
Yeah, that's something that brings something up. There was FileFront, EF files, and in general it was so there was someone from Star Trek Voyager Elite Force asking a question or making a statement about something in roleplay or something that went wrong, and immediately a few other people were complaining about something similar or complaining against the complaint, and they were just so engaged in trying to talk something bad rather than to solve it. And I haven't seen that kind of behavior much in Elite Force 2. Oh god, I said it again. Elite Force. Okay, I didn't see that much behavior in Elite Force 2. Most people that had that behavior were pretty much isolated after a short time. People did tell their minds to them. They said, listen, I don't like your attitude. Can you please be a bit nicer? And most of the time, these people were then gone. So
the fact that Elite Force 1 had the bigger multiplayer community, so there were more people playing
that's probably it, yeah.
You remember Elite Force Review with Luke Sutton and that lot? This is what I mean, but it was such a good community. They used to even do like news report style thing on the latest mods. It was a good time.
Yeah, there was a lot of ambition and a lot of interest into the community and I'm not sure if that's the right word, the coherence of the community, so that it all comes together somehow. And if it is just a easy, simple, quick-made review that got better over time. So I think there was a lot of effort put into the game, into the community. And I'm not sure if it is the love of the fans for the game or for the genre, or if it is the general idea of people who like Star Trek, that they want to get along with everyone, that they want to become better, develop things, make things better in general, not just sit there and do nothing, but if they can't mod, they at least try to be nice in the community, like a counselor helping everyone else or something like that. I've seen a lot of this in the community.
Saturn, maybe you tell us your pros?
Sure. The first thing that is already said is the better graphics. I mean, if you look at the faces of your characters or of the skins, then you will notice an intensely better looking face in Elite Force 2 and compared to Elite Force 1. And the graphics in general is just better, which is not really surprising, but then again, it is a pro. And on top of that, I believe the variety of new features is just awesome. It emphasizes a lot more on exploration and tinkering around with your tricorder, solving small riddles and stuff like that. And this really spices up the game. This is something I really like about it. This is probably what Elite Force 1 is missing a little bit, because in Elite Force 1 you don't really have to really do an exploration of the map. It's rather clear what you have to do and where to find it. And this is something that changed for the better with the second part. This I really find really nice, and on top of that you have those question answer stuff, and I believe they even had an impact on ongoing story. If I remember that correctly, if you answer certain things, then you would end up with a different girlfriend or something like that.
Yeah, that's right.
This really improves the game a lot, I believe. And those hidden ships and hidden areas also are quite nice, I believe. I mean, I've played Elite Force 1, the single player, a lot. And after a while, you simply know where everything is, what to do, where you have to dodge enemy fire, stuff like that. And this is a general behavior that you know what to do on the maps. But if you got fed up with that, you could even go and collect all those starships, for example, or find all hidden rooms and stuff like that. This is a nice change for the Elite Force shooter area. I believe this was a good idea. And in general, if you look at the story or the artwork, I believe it was a nice way of designing weapons. I mean, if you remember Elite Force 1, you had the standard phaser rifle, and you could use it like a sniper rifle when using the alternate fire mode. And in Elite Force 2, you had a dedicated sniper rifle, which from my point of view makes a lot more sense here. And a lot of these changes were, from my point of view, a lot more sensible. But the overall feeling was still a lot tracky. Maybe they could have done a little bit more, but you got Romulans, Klingons, Ferengi, of course, Federation, and you were on the Enterprise. I mean, in Elite Force 1, you if you had the expansion pack, you could explore the Voyager, and here you could do the same with the Enterprise. And I believe that fan base of the Enterprise show was still really, really big, maybe even bigger than the Voyager fan base. And they added that on top, and they had a look at the things that happened in the shows, and they tried to use it. And as I said, maybe they could have done a little bit better job, but they did a solid job here, I believe. And of course, the voice acting, once again, the Activision Star Trek games all benefit from having the original voice acting, the people who really were on the shows doing the voice acting. And this is really great. This gives a nice feeling if you hear the Captain Picard talking to you, or once again Tuvok. This is really good, I believe.
I have also to say basically the same things. I really like the improved graphics. The facial expression and the lip syncing was amazing. I think this is still looking good today. Also, the tricorder puzzles, and they finally included a bomb mode in the multiplayer. I so wished I had this already in Elite Force 1, but now I finally had it. And as you mentioned, the many secrets, the Borg level, the Enterprise levels, the Daedalus levels, really amazing experience back then. I was really hyped for this game, and I wasn't disappointed from the story. Okay, let's go to the other side of the coin. I just move on, I don't have that many. I just told you I really enjoyed the story. Until a certain part of the game, I would say I really enjoyed it. Then it dropped a little bit. After you are introduced to the Idril and had to fight them, it really got a little bit strange, and it wasn't the same experience for me then as I had with Elite Force 1. The whole first part was a round picture. You had really this good feeling after the story, and here I think it hurted a little bit. Also, what I didn't like was the moving in the multiplayer part. It felt a little bit strange. I still can't tell you what exactly. I like the moving in the single player, but for the multiplayer it's really strange.
It's interpolation and prediction. In single player you have a different kind of movement because the calculations needed for that can be done. In multiplayer they cannot be done reliably. because of the network connection. You have to constantly communicate with the server to generate the same effect, and that's not practical.
I believe I know what the captain means. It's a little bit like jumping with a jetpack.
Yeah.
A strange movement.
It's more like sliding.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. They have a movement system that is oriented that it simulates the way you would step normally, like a normal person would would move forward with steps, not sliding like in Elite Force 1, and that doesn't really work well in multiplayer. So that's the difference what you have in single player and Elite Force 2.
Also, what I didn't like was the Enterprise hull battle with the big fucking gun.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
And I heard in the interview that Activision wanted this because they wanted a reason for players who weren't fans of Star Trek to play this game, to have a big fucking gun.
Oh, great.
And the last thing is the duck or cover animation. It really looks strange.
Oh.
You could say it is a pro if you are in the fun corner of the game, but well, it didn't fit for me.
Yeah, it adds some comedy, that's true. Yeah, I believe I continue. I totally concur the torpedo mission is crap. The first part about it is you are not really introduced to the situation. I remember I tried this mission over and over and over and only failed because I never realized I could shoot the damn torpedoes that are crashing into the Enterprise. Once you realize that, you understand this, everything falls into place and it's clear what to do. But if you do not notice that, then you're simply fucked. There's nothing you can do. The ship is guarded for the most time by its own shields. You cannot fire on it, and only for a short period you can. And in the meantime, you're simply getting wrecked. And if there's no introduction at all that you can shoot at the torpedoes, why would you assume so? I believe in the entire show there are only 1 or 2 instances where this is shown, and nobody really remembers that. So this really drove me crazy too.
That's a bad introduction to this. I think there was a dialogue planned where Tuvok explains further, but it was cut out.
Yeah, and this is the problem. I mean, it's okay to have this kind of task, it's okay, but with no real introduction, what you can do, you can shoot around a whole lot until ever getting the idea that you can shoot the torpedoes that are hitting you. You won't get the idea really fast, that's for sure. Along with that, there's another part that I really found a little bit too tricky. This is this bridge with force fields that vanish. In the single player, there's a certain position where you have to cross a bridge, and this bridge consists of handles and force fields where you have to walk on. And I never really gotten around to understanding the pattern. So you're crashing down over and over and over again for like 20 minutes or so on this single spot, and this really frustrates you. So I believe this part was a little bit too hard. If you really do not recognize the pattern, there's no way you can get there without doing it randomly. So after a while, you don't care about where you step because somehow you will get over. You will be fine. This sucks.
That's actually the way how you get over. It's jumping on the parts that are coming up next, and then jumping on from there to the parts that come immediately afterwards. That's the planned way to do it.
The idea is clear. You have to wait for the next force field, but usually you wait too long because the force field beneath your feet is vanishing, and start again.
Yeah, you have to jump, definitely, and you have to be fast. And I also think this was one of the passages which I really hated.
Yeah, and then already mentioned this strange feeling in the multiplayer. I never really gotten around doing the multiplayer on the internet because already when using the bots, I wasn't really fond of it. I mean, if you come to the game at first, if you have never played Elite Force 1, never played Quake, the multiplayer is probably completely fine, but in contrast to Elite Force 1, this was too big of a change for me personally. It somehow feels a little bit sluggish, a little bit slow, and this is something that pushed me off of the entire experience somehow. Maybe I'm the only one who isn't really fond of the story. The captain said after a certain point when you find the Idris, I believe it already starts when you are on the Borg ship. I mean, the Borg mission is okay up to the point where you meet the boss, the final Borg enemy. This is where it really begins to get cheesy from my point of view. If you remember how you have to shoot him, how the Borg drone reacts, it's very un-Borg, and I just feel it's a really cheesy way of creating a final opponent, a final enemy. And yeah, the iteral issue, I believe the most outstanding problem is mass critters. I mean, that basically you're shooting mindless critters. It's Starship Troopers in a way. You shoot the bugs and they're coming, and nothing behind it. It's a little bit too easy of an idea, and I believe, especially looking from today perspective, I really don't think the Bikini Girl added positively. I mean, yeah, for a guy, it's of course nice looking, but actually it really doesn't fit the Star Trek genre at all. It's a little bit too sexed up, in my opinion. And
well, think about Rise.
Original series had plenty of scantily clad ladies in it, so
yeah, TOS. Yeah, but this was a really different time back then, and for me personally, it's the very same if I watch TOS. Sometimes I really can't take it because it's just too cheesy. But back then it was in the late 60s, and they were still experimenting with TV shows. And for a computer game of 2002 or 2003, I believe, it's a little bit late to explore this road.
Well, I think what they tried to do, and I come to this later, why there are so many things like Borg boss that looks like Predator or Starship Troopers, there's a reason why this is so. And there's also a reason why they added a female with very big points of attention. If you want not to be too specific.
And especially a real lack of clothing.
Yeah, there are reasons why they did this, and mostly because of the audience they were targeting. The publisher does say to the developer what the audience will be. So I would not finally or completely put this problem on the ritual side, just so that we are clear. There certainly was some element of influence from Activision about these things. At least
I can imagine that quite easily. I'm not pointing fingers at a specific side. I just noticed that it is, as I said, for me it is cheesy. I know why someone would do that, but as I said, it doesn't really add quality to the game. It may attract certain players, but it doesn't add quality.
I think we're taking the Elite Force 2 much more serious game than we would Elite Force 1. It's like Elite Force 1 is more like, yeah, everything is mixed and everything is TOS, and well, everything is okay. Well, all fits somehow in there because that's how TOS is. I think Elite Force 2 is more compared to the next generation, which is much more serious, much more scientific, much more thought through. And if you then compare that to the next generation, you obviously find a lot of things that do not add up. So, yeah.
Okay. Do you want to continue with the cons?
There aren't that many things that I really don't like about this game. The multiplayer is one of them. Like, I just didn't spend a lot of time in it. I could never really find that many games of the regular multiplayer. The multiplayer only really began to be really good when the co-op mod was around and people were playing on a regular basis through, not just the single player campaign, but also mods, custom levels. Sometimes we'd even get on the co-op mod just to play these levels and test them and stuff, and it was good. But the standard multiplayer that came with the game obviously wasn't the game's strong point at all. The other thing is I hated that turret level. I must have seen the Enterprise blow up about 150 times when I first played the game. Like, I literally couldn't figure out how to beat it. I think I had to do a level skip or something like that just so I could see the rest of the game.
Yeah, I did a look up for a walkthrough. I didn't cope with the situation either.
And I played up to that mission. I thought, this ruins the whole game for me, kind of thing. And then I played the rest of it and, I forgot about that. But, every time I come up to that mission on replays, it would be, this mission again, Like,
the much hated enemy. It's really a bad memory.
So that would be the worst aspect of the game. I don't mind it so much now because, I know how to do it, but for a first time playthrough, that was a nightmare. I also thought that while I liked the storyline with the exomorphs, I think there was a little bit too much of them in the game. After a while, the enemy variety started becoming really limited to just Romulans and exomorphs. We fought the Borg earlier in the game, but after that it was mostly just Romulans and exomorphs. And mercenaries for one mission, but that was just one mission. So I would have liked to have seen a bit more enemy variety in the game, but yeah, and there was a fair decent amount of missions, as I said before. It seemed longer than the first game anyway. It took quite a bit longer to get through than Elite Force 1.
Well, I can make the round complete and say I also hated the stupid mission where you had to shoot the torpedoes and the capital ship. I failed on it as well, and I think I had also to look up somewhere a walkthrough or something like that. I think I found a discussion in the Ritual forums, which introduced me for the first time to the Ritual forums. So that was a really stupid mission. Whoever did this should be hanged or something similar painful. But other than that, the reoccurring enemies was not really that great. One thing I really hated, or still hate in this game, is when you want to make your own models, you have to become a models expert, you have to find a specific program, you have to learn how to introduce it into the game. It's extremely complex. I only know of 2 people that ever made it, and I had personally contact with. So I think that's really extremely complicated and difficult, which is the reason why there are not so many models created for the game and used in mods. I think this is something I hate as a developer, really, on this game, because it makes my job to adding models for new weapons or whatever very difficult. It's so difficult to up to a point that I cannot do it alone. So I think that's what I hate these days, really, about this game. So yeah, and that it's old, but that's something the game is not responsible for. So yeah.
Before we move on, I would like to mention, as I saw the stream on the side a little bit, I saw something I completely forgot. What you could say is a con. The weapons have now magazines. I hadn't a problem, but I guess many people back then really hated this, coming from Quake 3 to now have magazines now. So you have to really look how many bullets do you have in the magazine.
Yeah, but the reload time is so short it doesn't even matter, really.
Oh yeah, it matters in multiplayer, but
in single player though.
In single player, I think it doesn't matter that much, but I can understand that point. But I think it adds to the realism. I think it adds to the positive feeling in single player.
I wouldn't say it is a real con for me too, because as you say, it adds a little bit more realistic aspects about it. I mean, yeah, it could go over it like Elite Force 1 did and say, yeah, you have 200 shots in this gun, you can fire them all in a row. Of course you can, and I believe even in a sci-fi sense it might make sense, but then again, every weapon will have to be reloaded at some point. I mean, the most unrealistic weapon about this is probably the phaser from Elite Force 1, which doesn't really need any recharging time, it only gets a little bit less powerful after a short time. This is really not realistic.
I guess it's a little bit of the tropes what we have from weapons in games. Most of the games back then had a weapon which had unlimited ammunition, and this time it was the phaser.
Yeah, and this is kind of a pro from me. The bat'leth was a good idea, I believe. I mean, I'm sure they somehow, as you said, copied it from another game like Counter-Strike, where you have the knife, and well, they use the bat'leth, which is basically the same. But I still find the idea good that you have some sort of fallback weapon where you cannot run out of bullets somehow.
That's true. Okay, then what makes this game unique? I think it's amazing that we had more classic track actors like Tony Todd, who played the brother of Worf. Jeffrey Combs is there. You have Tim Russ, Patrick Stewart. Quite a big cast for such a niche game. Then we have, of course, now a tricorder. The developers used also the original blueprints for the Enterprise. And the last thing, they had a branching dialogue system, which wasn't unique in the gaming world, but it was still very new back then, I would say.
The only game I can think of that lets you fairly freely explore the Enterprise E, unless you count the last level of Star Trek Hidden Evil, but I don't think that counts because it wasn't like free roam like you have in this game. That is something I can't think of any other Star Trek game that does that. And also you have completely new characters that are not part of the films or the series, and I think the Hazard Team characters are really well written, and the ones that come back from the first game are really well developed, especially like the main three, Monroe, Telsia and Shell, because those are the most recognizable ones from the first game, and also the relationship between Monroe and Telsia as well.
Well, I personally find the tricorder really a unique plus. I mean, it adds somehow more an adventure style to this actual shooter. I mean, basically it's a shooter, it's meant to be a shooter, but still you have adventure elements like pick up stuff, change something on the map and solve certain riddles, which you need a tricorder for, and it's made in a versatile way. There are different ways how you can interact with your tricorder with a device. And there are also different scanning modes, and I believe this really pushes the whole Star Trek feeling, because thinking back to the shows, very often tricorders had an integral part of solving a problem, and this is something that I believe was missing in Elite Force 1 entirely. I mean, yet there isn't a tricorder in the game, but it doesn't really play any role, and in Elite Force 2 it really enhances the Star Trek experience. So in my opinion, it's with that respect more Star Trek than Elite Force 1 was.
Well, yes, I can agree with the tricorder, and there was a lot of uses for the tricorder, that's definitely sure. And the scripting language, of course, very, very powerful, and the tricorder stuff is all done with scripting. That's how powerful this is. So all the puzzles you see in the tricorder is done just using scripts in the level with some global scripts combined. And the modding capability of this game makes it very unique, because you can change a lot of things just with the text files, with the files of the game, without any development applications or tools where you can program and compile it, because it would need to be compiled if it is C++, which many games have. This is very little in this game. You can do a lot in C++ in this game, but you don't need to. You can modify many files to achieve almost the same effect. So that's very unique, I think. I think the only game that has something similar from which I know is pretty much Half-Life 2. But I'm not sure which else games there are, but I just know that the first game, Star Trek Voyager Elite Force, did not have that capability. So that was a nice thing. I think the amount of love that went into the game from the developers, it's not so apparent, because not all of them were Star Trek fans, obviously, but they liked to put their ideas and their little comments in the scripts, and some strange naming of objects, or they built in lifts that are seen in the Aliens movie. They added strange target names to objects that referred to movies from 1971. All these little things that are hidden in the game, which you don't really see if you just play it, is, I think, something that makes it unique for me, because I found so much hidden stuff that you can't really find in the game. But as soon as you open a level script or load a map in Radiant or look at the source code of the project or any map, you will see certain notes where the developers tease each other or talk about things like like the Borg boss. He doesn't look just like Predator. So it's like a note like he looks like Predator, but not Predator enough. So they were teasing each other a little bit in the code, and yeah, that's something that makes it for me unique. This I think it has to do with my being so involved into modding in this game, that I see it from a completely different perspective. So I think I'm not the best person to ask.
Well, that's part of the reason we are doing this video.
My nerdy modding perspective.
Definitely.
Yeah, of course. It's simply a different angle which opens ideas and thoughts. And as the captain says, that's pretty much what this is all about here, to look at a game from different perspectives and maybe exploring things along the way you never really knew but are really interesting.
Oh, there's another thing that makes this game actually special to me, because my first clan actually was in Elite Force 2. So actually had 2 own clans, and they were actually like a family. So you would go online in the evening and you would meet in TeamSpeak, and someone else would join from the clan, and then you would play a game, most of the time Elite Force, but not all of the time, and you would come to know this person as a private person, like more, the relationship would go more intimate, not in any naughty way, but just in the way that you know the person better and better over the years, and you develop a different kind of friendship with these people. And there's still one person which I founded a clan, actually there are 2, which I founded a clan with, which I have still contact and play regularly on weekends. And I think we know each other since, oh my god, a long time, over a decade. Much longer, I think 15 years now or something like that. Since then we had talked to meet each other, and maybe this year or next year we will actually finally meet each other in real life. There's someone else from Belgium I want to meet, my co-leader from Dark Matter, which was my second clan, but it's difficult because he's from Belgium, and getting there is, especially now, difficult for me. So I think the people that are connected to the game and the time spent with the game is what makes this game special for me.
Let's use this as an introduction to the special memories. For once, I was so hyped that I read every article I could find of this game. Then I was a little bit disappointed of the multiplayer, but I still enjoyed the experience, especially hunting my friends with a Klingon Battlet. That was really fun. Then the Dallas mission and the Enterprise mission without the cannon was really amazing, and playing your co-op mod. I really rediscovered this game only with your mod. It's such an improvement, and every game should use a co-op mod, I would say.
Thank you. That's also the reason why I made the mod, because I thought when I play tested some single player levels with other people, I noticed how much fun it is, and that actually the single player was not that bad in this game, and it should really be available for everyone to play together. And that's actually the biggest driving factor to create this mod and maintain this mod and continue the mod.
Just one question for the captain. How would you play Tetris in co-op?
There is definitely an answer for that.
I mean, you said every game, and I believe this would be really interesting.
Yeah, one has to turn the object, and the other one has to put it left or right, push it left or right.
Something like that.
No. Every player only controls one shape.
Oh, so you need 4 to 6 guys.
Yeah, like taking it up to the next level.
Definitely, yeah.
It's a triangle. Triangle. It's your shape. Too late.
Resource management is this code.
Yeah.
That could be actually really funny.
Requesting co-op Tetris, okay.
Me and my big mouth.
It is possible, but a lot of work possible.
You know, there are a lot of things that are possible. It's not always making a lot of sense.
Desirable. Yeah.
Okay, let's move on. Who wants to be next?
Well, actually, I've mostly spoken about them, really. You know, it's when I think about the old modding community on Elite Force Files, and we used to get together on the co-op mod and play the new levels and stuff. Yeah, those really are the special memories, to be honest. Can't really think of anything else.
Oh, no problem. Saturn, maybe you?
Well, it depends. I mean, of course, the initial game experience, handling tricorder, new weapons, discovering the game the first time. I may have talked a little bit bad about it a few moments ago, but the overall experience, I believe, was nice, and I still remember that in a nice fashion. And maybe one thing I did at some point, because I was annoyed that I had to put into ESOs into the virtual CD drive and installing that stuff, was I tried to create a DVD kind of image, and actually it worked rather well, except for one thing. I had to press enter one more time when it asked me for a second CD, because you didn't have to switch it. So first experience kind of when trying to repack a game. In this case, it's a rather easy experience. And this was the first time where I was really thinking, well, this could have been done better even back then, because DVDs were already available back then.
I guess it was just a turning point from CDs to DVDs, so it's hard to take that as a bad thing for the company who developed the game.
No, it's not really a bad thing, but this is what I mean. It's a similar what Chris said, and you see a certain problem, and you can go on and complain about it, or you can do something about it. And this was one of those instances where I thought, well, let's see what we can do about it. I don't want to handle 2 files, and pressing enter a second time was okay. So I was fine for that. Today I would probably build another installer from the already installed game, but the experience counts, I believe. This was the first time I was thinking, well, I can do that better.
Also, what I wanted to mention is, you could get a little bit the expression that we are thinking a bit negatively about the game, but the reason behind this is we so much love the first part, and to that it's a little bit an odd comparison.
Yeah, this is what I meant. You're always judging it in comparison to Elite Force 1. If you're new to the Elite Force story, if you're starting with the second part, the game is probably quite alright.
Right, it's excellent actually for this time. And this is something I've seen many people do, comparing a newer game to an older game. And you can only do this if the game you're playing is based on the same principle and the same game mechanics, the same engine, with some little improvements. Yeah. It's like you're expecting the same game, just better. And if you don't get this, you're unhappy, you're unsatisfied.
This is the problem. If you judge it with the same glasses on your nose watching it, for example, if you compare Ashes of the Singularity with Supreme Commander, this is a game that is from a basic principle really similar, but it is different. It is a different game depending on which one you are looking at. And if you only judge it in the context of the other game, it is a completely different approach, a completely different experience. If you do this step and say it's an own game, a single game for all by itself, then things tend to change considerably, especially in Elite Force 2, where you can say the game is quite alright. There's nothing really faulty with it. But if you compare it to Elite Force 1, things change. And I believe this really is something that people should step back a bit from and look at the game by itself and judge it from that, and they would change their minds quite a lot.
Yeah, that's the same problem people have with movies. And my mother always says, oh, this movie wasn't that good, this movie wasn't that good, and that. And then I said, why? I like the movie, I like this and this and this, and this was really great. And she said, oh, I didn't notice. And I said, yeah, why? Why did you not notice? And she said, yeah, I was expecting this and this. And I said, why do you judge it from the movie you saw first? Why are you watching another movie if you want the same than the first? Just go and watch the first movie.
And this is what probably messes up the
experience you could have if you would not be biased. And that's something many people do wrong. And
especially with movies, if you have a new version of the movie, this is particularly bad because you always compare it to the first one if you know it, and this is really dangerous sometimes. Exactly what you said, the movie by itself might be alright, but maybe the older version did it really better, you do not know, maybe it is a question of taste, but anyways, that doesn't make the movie bad itself necessarily. It may still be quite alright, but maybe not as good as the old one. But that doesn't really matter for the movie itself.
Yeah, I think many people do not realize when you play something the first time, when it is everything new the first time, your brain is completely differently adjusting to this. Completely having a new experience is what the brain actually wants. Your brain is very satisfied if it learns new stuff or experiences new stuff. And once you know these things, they don't stand out as much to you anymore. Even if they're even better and greater and faster and whatever you more desire, if they are not exceedingly more like you would expect them to be from the first part, you don't even really notice the difference in many cases. And I think this is
even the improvements.
Yeah, I think this is what makes you feel the second part wasn't that great, but actually it was really great. It was a good thing. It was a good game, a good movie, whatever, but you didn't really notice it because you were still looking back at the old and you were comparing it completely wrong. And I think this is a main problem many people have. And I for myself, strive to not have that problem. I really, when I want to watch a second movie of something, I expect the same actors, or at least something along the lines of the story of the first movie, something that continues it, but I don't expect everything to be the same. And with this expectation, I enjoy the movies much more than my mother, even if we have in some movies the same taste and we like the same things in some movies, and we are very often have the same opinions about them, but she's often less excited after the movie because she says, well, in the first movie it was like this and I like that better, or so. She compares it really strongly to the first movie. I don't really do this. I try to see the second movie or second game as a separate thing. Maybe I learned that from the people coming to Elite Force 2 and saying, oh, this game sucks.
I would be an exception to that because, well, I was very young when I first played Elite Force 2, so maybe that had something to do with it, but I remember I played Elite Force 1 and I loved it so much and all of that, but when I played Elite Force 2 I was just like, wow. Like, I was just blown away by the game, and I didn't have any issue with the game until that turret mission. But, you know,
I think everyone can relate to this.
I didn't think this game sucks. I literally, when I went online and saw the criticism for it, I thought, what's the matter with you people? This game is awesome, you know? So I think it's a bit like with, you know, when they remake movies and stuff, you know, they always say the original is better, and it's just a personal bias, and it isn't always true.
That's really true, but I think we are a little bit off topic now. What do you say? Let's continue with what could a sequel do better. I would say they should keep the improvements with the tricorder and everything. A little bit more in the graphical aspect, of course, then get the multiplayer, a nice movement system, more time on the starships, also in the multiplayer and the single player. Then what else? Yeah, I always had this idea to include a little bit more the tricorder in the multiplayer. For example, in the way the movies Aliens did with the moving detection. So you had a team member with the tricorder always open to see where the other team is. And a new Elite Force, of course, needs a co-op mod. You have to have it.
Yeah, they should include it from the factory. So, because adding it afterwards is a lot of work. It's really lots of things that need to be changed, adjusted, and just so you get it running stable. And then at the end of the day, when you get it running stable, you haven't really added any real content. So that's in addition then. So I'm just saying this in defense before you ask me to do it.
No, that wasn't my plan. Just wanted to say I should say hi to you, Chris. Janelle, Danielle, and Tony, they are in the chat.
Yeah, they probably wondered which of the voices is mine. So this is my voice. I greet them back.
Okay. Who is next with a sequel?
I believe you said most of it. The best really would be a combination of Elite Force 1 and 2. A fast-paced multiplayer experience like in Elite Force 1, and a really well-done single-player experience like from the technical aspect from Elite Force 2, spiced up with a little bit better opponents and maybe more of the known Star Trek races. I mean, for example, you could end up with something of the Dominion timeline, or something is going on at this point. I mean, if you would think back about DS9, yeah, you have this treaty here, but that doesn't mean that there's everything fine at the Gamma Quadrant.
I have to interrupt you, sorry, but I can add to the idea. I find it, if Star Trek Online would be a better game in terms of graphics lag, in terms of gameplay, in the shooter perspective, and in terms of grinding everything away, if it would not be so grindy and not so extremely time consuming, they could really do something really amazing with it, because they have a lot of content, a lot of ideas already in the game, and a lot of mechanics they have are really good, really stable mechanics. They have broken these mechanics in the past so many times I lost count, but now they are really solid. So it's now a really good online shooter. they're not paying me, just to be clear, but I've played the game a while, and what turns me off in this game is that they prolong the interest of people in the game by adding new stuff that can be bought or worked for really hard. So you are farming a lot, or the grind factor in this game is very high, and this turns me off because what I want is a good story, is entertainment. Like a little episode of the next generation is actually what I want to experience in a game. When I play a game, I want to have entertainment and maybe some action or more action depending on my mood, and then I want to be satisfied. After the game, I want to close the game and feel happy about it somehow. I want to feel like I've achieved something or I had lots of fun, but I don't really have that so much in Star Trek Online, because what you have to think about is, okay, how much dilithium can I refine next time or something like that. That's not really a good thing. So I would like the next game not to have exactly this, but from the current perspective, how I can see how money flow goes. I would suspect that if there's anything new, it will be added to Star Trek Online, because there's where the money is. There's where people are willing to pay money for whatever they get there. And I see it's very difficult. I can only imagine that it would be very, very difficult for a new game to match up to this, as long as Star Trek Online is around. So I cannot see a new shooter, especially a new Star Trek shooter, which is very complicated to make because of the licensing, because of the people's expectations, because of the technical stuff that you have to think of, because of the logic you have to put into the game. You cannot just make a game and call it Star Trek. You have to really do research. You have to have people that are into Star Trek, that are really interested in bringing the Star Trek feeling to the player, and that's really difficult, I think. So I'm not saying Star Trek Online is bad or something, but it's now here, and as long as that is here, chances are very slim anything else will come.
Well, I think it depends on who is in charge at Paramount. If they look at the Star Wars franchise, they see there is a lot of money in video games. So the decision to focus only on Star Trek Online, like you said, it's a good game, but you have only one game. If you bring out every year 2 or 3 games, well, you get a lot of more money.
It's also, multiplayer is difficult. Like Elite Force 2 multiplayer now is actually virtually dead. There's nobody playing. Only if you invite someone on Discord, or if you have a special event, then there might show up a couple of people, but most activity is really from the co-op. So I think that really turned at the beginning of the co-op. There was very little activity in the co-op, and most people were playing just deathmatch or something like that. And now it has completely turned. If there is activity, it's mostly on a co-op server. So I think that's
which brings me back to my better part. I also agree co-op should be mandatory. I mean, especially in a game where you have a team around you. I mean, there are rare occasions where you are really alone at a mission. You always have your team members, and this screams for co-op.
Now, the technical possibilities, and that actually almost everyone has internet these days. If that would have been so in the past, I'm pretty sure most games would have co-op today. So
yeah, and I believe this is something that basically is also a social change factor. I mean, back then having competitive games was the norm. It was normal, it was ordinary. You were fighting human players. Yeah, you could either play against the AI alone, or you could play against other people. At best, you had team deathmatch or something like that. But essentially, it was always the same. At least one human being had to suffer a loss in order for another one to win. And the co-op breaks this system entirely and says you can all be winning or all be losing, but it is not necessary that a human is losing for having fun. And this is something I really like to emphasize, because let's face it, a lot of people around here are going to work every day. They are stressed. They want some positive experience. And if you have a mechanism like many board games and most computer games where it is necessary for one human to lose in order for another to win, this really is something that can keep me away from playing it, because getting my butt kicked somehow, this is something I can get at work and I'm being paid for it. This is something I'm not really striving for. And
what, you getting paid for this?
Well, not for this work here. No, not really. I might take this up with a certain captain. No, let's cut the crap. I mean, this is why I say co-op is actually mandatory. You have a situation where you can play the game together without someone of your team, of your people, being necessarily the one who is losing. This is really a game changer, I believe. This is why it is mandatory, to improve the experience in general.
Yeah, I have a funny fact to share. I actually play with my mother. She used to be really, really good with computers back when there was C64 Commodore, and she used to have her own computer and write her own programs, just little stuff, just mostly playing games. And she bought some time back a computer, and when she bought the computer, I said, no, just pay 100 euros more and buy this one, because if you ever want to play games, this one can do it. And she did this despite her own objections that she doesn't want to spend so much money on the computer because she never uses it. And now we're playing co-op on exactly that computer, and she likes it. I played with her a few co-op games now. She liked Portal 2. Obviously, who doesn't? And she liked Elite Force 2. She likes my co-op mod a lot, actually. Sometimes she asks me if we can play this evening. So at first I thought she plays this because mothers love their child and they try to make their children happy, and she knows I did the mod. So she asks me once in a while so that I feel happy about it. But recently she started to ask more and more to play this game. So I was a little bit surprised because I think she honestly wanted to play co-op.
Yeah,
so.
this is what I mean. You have a positive feedback. I mean, yeah, of course you can lose. This is always an option. You can always mess up, but
you don't lose as a single person. You have not failed as a single
exactly.
person.
It is not. I'm getting my butt kicked. Yeah. This is really an important difference, and maybe getting back to the turret experience, maybe this is also what fucks up you that much. It is not like you are getting shot, you are falling off a rock. It is you are messing up the situation and the entire enterprise is shot to pieces.
I think that's a very German thing also. I think that being rude or nasty to someone who does something wrong is very much a German thing, because, well, I would not just confine it to Germany or German people, but I think it's especially strong in Germany. Not saying, oh, you did this wrong, come let me show how to do it right, but more like, oh, you did this wrong, you idiot. That's just something typical German. I've never had that with the English person, with an English.
Yeah, we are very serious about these kinds of things.
Never ever talk to me like this. But with Germans that never knew me before, they talk to you like this, and you think, what's wrong with you? And never had that with anyone else that was not a native German speaker. So
yeah, I believe this is a cultural aspect. It's more a what you can do for the team, and not necessarily what the team can do for you. And more just single guy trying to cope with the situation. This is what we are in a way very good at, but in a way this is a very bad way to handle things, especially when it comes to co-op games. If you look at this, the guys who are trying to do everything themselves will mostly ruin the game, because mostly they will fail, and this is bad for the team.
Yeah, I've tried to limit the ego factor for everyone so that no one can really be really uber in a co-op. So even if you have a shield regeneration as technician, it doesn't regenerate if you're constantly shot at. So your regeneration will stop, and the same goes for the doctor. Your health regeneration will be stopped if you're under fire, and the medic has more sensitivity to weapons, but is easier on the gases. So if there's some poison or something, he has no problem as much as a technician or weapons expert. And I've tried to make it so that in an intense situation, the team works the best if they work together. So if one alone goes and tries it, he has to be really, really smart and good and know exactly what he does, or he will fail because he is there without his teammates, and he will most likely die, and die more than once because he doesn't have the strength of the team. And that was a very difficult balancing to do. And I still think it's not quite right, but it's much better.
Well, you did an amazing job, I would say. Also, this integration of the classes was a really unique thing. I can't think of any co-op game who does this.
No real co-op games. I mean, if you think back to Elite Force 1, you had those modes where you have specialties, but it is not a real co-op mode, just a team mode. There's a difference here, but the concept is very much the same.
Yeah, of course, the Team Fortress style gameplay was not a unique aspect, but for co-op it's quite unique, I would say. Daedalus, do you want to add something for this section?
Well, if you take some of the ideas they've had for some of the missions, I mean like the storylines and stuff from Star Trek Online, and if you were to take those storylines and missions and put it with Elite Force 2 style gameplay, then there you would have already an awesome game, yeah. I mean, I used to think Star Trek Online was great when it first came out, but now I honestly think it's a steaming pile of crap because of all of the monetization and all of that. But without getting into all of that, I really feel like they have the potential to, like, if they wanted to make an Elite Force 3, they've got more than enough material to work with, especially with all the new stories that they're writing on Star Trek Online. But it's a case of, you know, we're not under Activision anymore, which in my opinion was the golden age of Star Trek gaming, and there seemed to be endless games coming out at the time, and
the Activision era, I can agree.
Only things we've been getting in recent years, other than Star Trek Online, are these absolutely terrible mobile games that are just about making money and not about actually having a good game. But, you know, I would say a sequel to Elite Force 2 would just be more of the same, really. But, you know, taking what that has done and doing it even better, so an expansion on the story, more missions, more weapons, more of everything, really. There is so much potential that is just being wasted on Star Trek Online instead, in my opinion.
I pretty much agree with what you said, and I think if you could take all the ideas that they tried to make good in Star Trek Online and put this as, I would not say downloadable content, but maybe as a paid service, a monthly paid service. I really don't like this kind of service, but I think it would be fair to have something like that, to have a continuous update on missions or stories, and you can drop out at any time and then you come 5 months later back and then you can play all the stuff that has been released before. But something like a subscription model that's more flexible and that's not unfair to the people that are constantly there. So like if you want to play the game, you have to subscribe, but you don't have to subscribe all the time. You can pay monthly, something like that. Because I think what makes Star Trek Online so very attractive for the publishers is that it is really a money cow because of the principle they use. It's not a critic towards the game or the mechanics or the publisher. It's just the way it is. They want to make money, obviously, because they're a company. They need money to go on and they want to be successful, and money is the way to measure how successful you are. So I'm not blaming them for anything, but I don't think that games like they used to exist before, that you just have a game, put all your effort into it and release it, and that's the product, and then you bring 1 or 2 or 3 patches and an add-on, is not how it is today. If people have a game they really like to play, they want to play for a long time, and they are mostly willing to pay. And I think that's what the new game would have to do better.
You only have to look at what Star Wars games have been doing in recent years. Like, so I'd say since about 2015 with the new Battlefront games, like they've been pumping them out like goodness knows what. We had Battlefront, Battlefront 2, Jedi Fallen Order and all of that. And these games they have lots of DLC, or they did. And that was the monetization, and that was the appeal of the games. And in my opinion, you know, I mean, Star Wars has the Old Republic, so they have their own MMO as well, but that is not the only Star Wars game that's current at the moment. So I feel like if Star Trek were to do a similar thing, where they could be pumping out games that were well monetized with some DLC missions and stuff like that, I would be okay with that personally, because it would be an improvement over the mobile games, and also it would be an opportunity to give fans what they want, which is, you know, something similar to Elite Force maybe.
Yeah, and something evolving, something like you watch a series because you want to see how it goes on, how it develops. And even if you can predict a little bit what it will be at the end, you still like to see how they got there. And I think something like that should be in games.
Yeah, I mean, I was at least expecting them to make a Star Trek Discovery game. I mean, say what you will about Discovery, but I was at least expecting them to make a game about it. I would play it if they made one, but they haven't. They decided to make more missions for Star Trek Online. I do not understand their way of thinking.
Well, I can't really understand their way of thinking in general, how they handle the franchise. The last 5 to 10 years, they really treated the fans like garbage. Killing fan projects, making strange design decisions. It's not really fan orientated.
Well, I think what's happening there is they want to refresh the fandom. You will, of course, lose a few fans that find this no longer appealing, but you will have a greater mass of fans that now come new in the genre, which is not only a nerd genre anymore. Star Trek is now like going to shopping. It's standard. It's not something that only nerds watch in their cellars. So it's broad daylight capable these days. You can say, oh, I watch Star Trek these days without anyone thinking bad about you these days. This wasn't like so before.
I don't think so. I believe this was never really an issue. I mean, of course, you have those really hardcore Star Trek fans which go to conventions, wear the uniforms and stuff like that. Of course, those people were looked at a little bit strangely, but in general, I wouldn't say that there was a real negative bias.
They were generally seen as Star Trek people, as nerds. And this sometimes was projected on other Star Trek fans, the same kind of behavior or nerdism. But at least this is my experience. So
I think the same goes for the Star Wars fans. You also had back then in the 70s, 80s, the hardcore Star Wars fans who dress as Ewoks or Chewbacca, and they also were the nerds. It changed a little bit. And now being a nerd is cool.
Yeah, if you look at the entire cosplay area, I mean, at times it is really amazing what amount of effort and work on details people do just to look like a certain character. And I believe this in the modern times, it has more gotten a positive connotation because it's a hobby like any other. I mean, you can say the same about someone who is watching football every weekend. I mean, you can also say, pal, is there nothing else in your life? But then again, this part is not bad at all, actually. If there's something you are burning for, then go for it. And if this means being a hardcore Star Trek or Star Wars fan or whatever, that's quite all right, I believe. And today I believe this is recognized a little bit more than before.
And if you are a company who has the rights to Star Trek, a big franchise, I think your first goal is always to get your own fans to watch the stuff. Of course, you also have the goal to get new fans, but you have to keep those guys to make at least a basic income, and on that you can expand. And pissing those guys off, well, it's not a good marketing strategy.
Well, unless you are really targeting mass market and are trying to really make it interchangeable. I mean, if you look at certain TV shows which are really successful, they are only taking what was already there and improve on that. And usually this means making it more digestible.
Yeah, sure, but it's an extremely big risk.
Yeah, of course. If you are doing it entirely bad, you will lose your fan base and will not have success with the average guy. Of course, this can happen. But this is something I believe has not happened that often in the last few years. For the most part, they are making a lot of money with those choices, with those decisions.
Well, if you look at the Star Wars franchise, the movies.
Yeah, they overdid it.
Yeah.
I know what you mean.
So I think we are now at a turning point, maybe, where they realize, maybe we shouldn't try everything.
Yeah, they overdid it, and especially when it comes to certain things getting repetitive, then you really have a problem. If you think, well, I have seen this movie before, it is some 30 years old, the setting has changed a little bit, but the story is essentially the same. This is really something where you will drive away your fans because they will notice. They will most certainly notice. And if you do this more than you should, you are in trouble.
Okay, I would say we are very far now from Elite Force. Let's go back to the game. Hidden features. Which one do you know? I know there are too many to list, but I would just count the major ones.
Oh my god! I know so many.
Do you mean the officially hidden features or the really hidden features?
Yeah, the nasty developer stuff.
I just count a few and you can expand. I know, of course, of the Super Mario level.
Yeah.
The many golden ships. After the Voyager mission, you could see all versions of the Enterprise. So the Enterprise A, C, D. Then the fish in Starfleet Academy. There is a fish in the pond who is jumping up and down. And he has also a name when you scan it with a tricorder. There is an Deep Space Nine stem board, which Nog and Jake sold in an episode. Also in an office in Starfleet Academy. Then you could find the iMod on the ship and keep it for the mission. There is Picard playing chess with a Romulan. There is a secret room with different ship models. And the Star Wars reference on K7.
Well, there are lifts that are modeled like the lifts from the movies from Alien. It's when this big exomorph crashes into the alien ship that's taking off, and Mission 7 with the Idril, the father of, what's his name? You know the guy. Yeah, the Idril Elder. These lifts are modeled after the movie from Alien, and it states so in the comments of the script as well. And there are references to certain movies, for example, the movie THX or THX 1138 from 1971. I watched the movie after I found that secret in the game code, in the script code, sorry, and it was an interesting movie. I don't know why they put it there, but well, someone wanted to share his love for the movie, and I can understand that. Then there are mostly names of the developers as crew members. So some crew members have similar names to the developers or their family names attached. And some crew members, there's a passage where they talk about crew members that look like cats, and there's a crew member that looks like a cat. For example, there are hidden secrets like this in the dialogues in the game. And I think the rest is mostly scripting related funny stuff where they put their name in ASCII art or something like that, or where they complain about an AI that doesn't do something that is supposed to do. And yeah, I think you have to really work with code to appreciate that stuff. Otherwise, I think it's not funny hearing about them.
Well, but at least it's there.
Yeah. And there are a few sequences that are modeled after other films. Like, for example, there's a sequence where a crew member gets snapped away from an alien in Mission 3, the USS Daedalus. And this is a scene modeled after the Alien movie, where an alien takes a crew member off the ship from the ceiling.
Yeah, I believe the same goes for the movie It, where they also depicted someone being dragged through a tunnel.
Yeah, I think this trope was really often done.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of references like this in the game. And I think it's not because they didn't have better ideas what to do, but because they probably liked that and put it in because they liked that.
And it fitted.
Yeah, they probably watched the movie when they were younger and it inspired them. Now they remembered it back and put it in there.
I also had a Event Horizon vibe in the game, especially in the Dallas mission when the lights go out.
Okay, I never thought of it that way.
Well, maybe it's just me. Anything else from you guys?
K7 Starbase looked nothing like it did in the series.
Yeah.
It's just like it looked like a believable place rather than a place with coloured walls and stuff. But still, it wasn't anything
Actually,
like in
wasn't
the
it named
series.
K9?
It says K7, doesn't it?
But now that you mention it, the scene with the Klingon who is trying to fry you with this robot casing thing, don't know exactly how to describe it. He always announces what he's going to do with you, so you can react on it because you know what is going to come.
Yeah, and this guy was voiced by Gigi Hertzler, Martok from Deep Space Nine.
Yeah, he has done a lot of that, and the funny thing is, I always recognize him by the voice. I may not really know that he's looking like, well, a guy, but I always recognize his voice.
The same goes for Tony Todd.
Yeah, very same.
Definitely, yeah. These are two really strong and nice voices you can never hear enough of.
Well, then there's just one topic left. Mods I planned to talk a little bit more about mods, but I think we're reaching now nearly 2 hours from the stream. So I just think we will invite you back to talk about your single mods separately. Now we just talk a little bit about which mods are out there and where to get them.
The best place to get mods for Elite Force 2 is the mod database, I think. Of course, there is also Nexus mods, but there aren't that many mods for Elite Force 2 on that website. So ModDB is the best one. Other than that, there is Chris's website, hazardmodding.de, but I think Chris should talk about that a bit more himself, since it's his.
Well, there are a few mods like Return of the Empty Throne, A Gate to Birds and the Beautiful Sky. Then there's Aftermath, that's Daedalus's mod, and I think there was one other which I don't quite remember. These are all single-player mods, and if you never
wasn't finished, called Forgotten Danger, but he just released the maps, but it wasn't actually the full mod. It was just what everything they created just got released to be used for whatever.
I've convinced the developer, which I have been learning from and talking a lot when he was still active, that he might release his source files, because what good will they do on his hard drive? And he obviously intended to release the stuff at some point, and now he can still release it even if it's not finished. It's better than just leaving it there. And he agreed with me, and after I think a few weeks he finally put it all together and released it. And I also asked if I can use some stuff of it in co-op, and one of the maps Daedalus made was based on a map that was provided from that code, so from that source. I think 2 co-op custom levels based on this released source.
It was Paradise Island, but I don't know which the other one was.
But this wasn't the guy who made the Nova class mod.
That's a different one.
Okay, that's it.
There was an RPG mod for a while. A few people played with it, but so there were a bunch of different maps for that where we could walk around different ships, and they had varying levels of interactivity. It wasn't as detailed a mod as the RPG mod for Elite Force 1, but we tried to, I say we, but the modding community tried to make an RPG mod for Elite Force 2, so we had a bit of that going on in the community for a while. But those aren't really mods so much, they're more so maps, but map mods, you know.
Yeah, that's right. I think they really tried to do that. Yeah, there are a few maps that have been changed, so you can play them in RPG. I think Oberleuchtner made one map with the Starfleet Academy.
Yeah, that's right. That was really impressive. I think he decompiled the map and then he rebuilt it so it was playable in multiplayer.
No, I think he just deleted objects. I think it's untouched, because from the level of the detail on the textures, I would say it hasn't been decompiled. Right. Because if you decompile the map and then do it again, compile it again, the textures are all messed up, and you had to put a lot of work into realigning all the textures, getting them all right, and that's... I don't think he did that. I think he focused on removing stuff from the levels by using script. And it was very well done. There were only a few things that could have been done better, but overall it was a nice experience. And we could do more like this in Elite Force 2, but yeah, I think at some point you have to ask, for whom are you doing this? Because if there are not many players playing RPG anymore, then what's the point really? So I think this is a question I don't ask myself so much with the co-op mod, because it's 99.99% done. Things that are now added are mostly new stuff or bug fixes. So, and it's still played. So.
And whereas with the Aftermath mod, it's just a case of I started it and I want to finish it. Of what my my personal continuation of the story would have been after the game finished. There's a few levels left to do, and then I think, I can call it a day. And
I played recently co-op with my mother and a friend of mine, and we played the single player. There was a lot of story and cinematics, and then we changed to one of your maps, to one of the Aftermath maps, and they enjoyed these maps much more than the actual single player maps, so it was fun.
Actual campaign?
Yeah, so they played the Aftermath mod. We played Aftermath mod because the single player campaign was too boring at this point. And they enjoyed that more than the actual single player because there was more action and they wanted action on this day. They wanted just shooting on that day. So they got this in your mod. It was not too much and not too less, and the level progression was good, and it felt good, and it felt connected, and there was all these little things that are not too much, made it feel just right when you just want to shoot something but still have to experience some environment or play a little bit in a Star Trek world. They really much enjoyed it, and I said after they said, "Oh, it's not finished," I said, "Oh, an update will come," and they said when. So now it's your turn.
Well, yeah, as soon as possible, really. As soon as it's ready. I don't like to do release dates, really, because, but that means a lot, though, to say people enjoy it, because, I've obviously invested a lot of time into it. And for something what has been a learning experience for me, and something I've only done in my spare time, which obviously, as time goes on, you have less and less spare time, so it means a lot that people have enjoyed the mod, and I'm definitely going to complete it, that's for certain, but I can't say when it will be finished, but hopefully soon we'll be releasing some new levels that have been in development for a very long time.
Okay, I would say this is the part of the video where we open the mic to you. Is there anything we missed, anything you would like to share with the community?
Yeah, maybe one thing. From my perspective, if you have a mod or a map that's not quite finished, but you need a little bit help or something, I'm offering to do the script. So scripting is for me like for other people drawing, or I would not say something nasty, but for other people like watching an enjoyable video or something like that. Scripting is for me a positive experience, and I do it with ease, and I'm glad to help people out with their scripting issues or level design issues in general, because I'm really good at it and I like doing it, and I like to see new maps, and new maps take a lot of time, a lot of work, and if someone has gone through all the lengths creating a new map or working on an old map, finishing it, I think I can help them with that little part of scripting and getting the map released. And so because I have found in the past that many people have started a map, almost finished it, and then stopped at some point because there were technical difficulties they did not understand how to fix. So if someone is listening and has a map that he wants to release, you can come to me for advice or help. I would be glad to help because I enjoy doing this. So, and if you have maps and code and source stuff that you don't use anymore, release the stuff. Maybe someone else will work on it.
So you hit him. Contact him soon.
You can find me on Facebook, Hazard Modding, on ModDB, Hazard Modding, on hazardmodding.com, or on Discord, but I imagine that's a little bit more difficult. Or if you go on a co-op server, you will find a Discord link displayed in the chat when you join the server, and you can write it down or take a picture of it and then enter that invite link into your browser and join us on Discord. So,
or you just click on any of the links below in the description.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Well, maybe I can ask a question at this point. Very early you mentioned that Virtual released the source code of the game. I wasn't aware of that. Can you elaborate on that?
The Virtual Entertainment is mainly a technical driver developer, which I mean by this that they used the engine from Quake 3 and enhanced it, put new tools in it, better graphics, better networking, better entity handling, everything better. And they separated the engine code completely from the code which drives the game. So when you use a tricorder, what happens when you use a tricorder is coded in the game code. And the game code is separate from the engine code. And Virtual Entertainment separated that because they sold licenses to other developers, and this was the smart way to do it. And what they released for Elite Force 2 is the game code, the code that is run on the server side.
The QVM, you mean?
No, Elite Force 2 does not have that.
Elite Force 2 something similar.
No. Elite Force 2 I don't know enough about the Quake QVE machine or whatever it is named to make a direct comparison, but I can tell you what it is. It is you have the executable of the game, and the executable loads DLL files, and there's one client DLL. There's almost everything related to the client, like physics and effects, what will the effect do when it hits the floor, and so on, or how the menu is constructed and stuff like that. The menu is loaded from certain menu files, but the code that handles the way you click stuff and so on is in that DLL file for the client. And then there's a DLL file for server, which contains all the game code for single player and multiplayer. And in this game code, you have stuff like, what does the tricorder do? What does the weapon do? Or what does this modus do for the weapon? Or how fast can players walk? And what is transmitted over the network? And all these stuff, all these things that you can control from the perspective, like how does bombing run work? How does capture the flag work? How does deathmatch work? This is all done in the game code. This is not in the engine. This is in the game code, and they released just the game code. So everything that's related to graphics, sounds, and scale, or new graphics effects with models and really complicated stuff, or better networking, are all things that you can really not do quite well without the engine code. There are some things you can do or hack into, sort of, but generally this stuff is in the engine code, and you do not have access in Elite Force 2 because this has not been released. So it's a positive thing and a negative thing because you cannot change the client and you cannot change the engine source. This is different with Star Trek Voyager Elite Force, that you have, as far as I know, access to everything.
Well, in terms of the multiplayer, that's true. The single player is a completely different thing.
Yeah, that's a positive thing in Elite Force 2. The single player and the multiplayer are in the same files. There's just a check if single player, if multiplayer, and then this code is executed or the other code is executed. And this is really, really great when working with it, and it helped a lot to make the co-op mod much faster. And many things that didn't work in the multiplayer at first from the single player could be changed in C++ by just adding another check if is multiplayer, do this instead of that. And that's really a great thing. And the next game could do this really better and release more of the code, so you can really change more and have much more complex mods.
Well, maybe it is even based on one of the big new engines which are actually open source. This would be also a possibility for a development team not to redo an engine all by themselves or something like that, and simply kind of do the artwork, do the game work, and not so much the technical stuff around it. This would be something I believe would make sense, especially if you are doing a game which is strongly content driven, like actually Elite Force is, I believe.
I don't know how Unity is with mods and how difficult it is to work with Unity, but as far as I know, it's on C# and much easier than the Quake engine, but I could imagine a game in that engine.
All right, thanks.
Okay, that's it for this video. Thank you for joining us. I hope you had a little bit of fun.
Sorry for me talking so much.
No problem.
This whole thing is about talking. It's just right.
Oh, okay. Then I'm not sorry anymore.
I hope you will join us again for a spotlight video for your mods.
Certainly.
Be down for it.
Well, as always, leave us a comment, tell us what you think about the game, and of course, play the game. Until next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.